Hello, and thanks for joining us on Chicago Tonight. I'm Brandis Friedman. Here's what we're looking at. Chicago Public Schools avoids deep cuts for now, but questions over additional state funding loom large. Two board members join us. The Red Cross announces a blood supply crisis. We look at what that means and how hospitals can prepare.
We have staff here 24 hours a day, and we're monitoring them constantly.
And we dive in with the Shedd Aquarium's rescued beluga whales. First off tonight, 2 people are killed in the cyclospora outbreak in Michigan, marking the first deaths of this recent outbreak nationwide. State health officials there say both people had underlying health conditions that may have been impacted by the intestinal illness and dehydration. Illinois public health officials say the state has 707 confirmed and probable cases of cyclosporiasis, which causes severe diarrhea. Chicago public health officials say of the 209 cases in the city, a specific source has not been identified, but 15 have been linked to the multi-state lettuce outbreak. 103 were likely acquired locally. Health officials recommend washing and cooking fresh vegetables to reduce your risk. A new safety plan for Chicago Public Schools is being expanded citywide. CPS principals and staff will start training this week on what's called the whole school safety model. The move comes more than 2 years after Chicago's Board of Education voted to remove police officers from school campuses after a push from students who said the officers' presence had a disproportionately negative impact on Black students. The new holistic safety plan gives students access to trauma-informed care, restorative justice, emotional support, and trusted relationships to protect and nurture their overall well-being. That framework has already been implemented in 275 CPS schools. And your back-to-school shopping just got a little cheaper. That's because starting this Friday, Illinois residents will not have to pay sales tax on school essentials like backpacks, pencils, and notebooks. Governor J.B. Pritzker blamed the federal government for rising costs.
The war in Iran, the tariffs, the federal corruption, and lax antitrust policies in Washington have caused rising prices of everything, from groceries to gas to housing to really everyday necessities. And as Illinois parents and students get ready for a new school year, everybody is feeling it. Illinoisans need relief. Americans need relief.
According to the Groundwork Collaborative, school supplies are nearly 11% more expensive this year than they were in 2025. But act fast, the sales tax holiday only lasts until August 16th. Up next, we hear from 2 Chicago school board members about their recently passed budget. They join us right after this.
Chicago Tonight is made possible in part by the Alexandra and John Nichols family, the Polk Brothers Foundation, and the support of these donors.
Chicago school board members may have passed a budget, but questions still remain. The Board of Education last week approved a nearly $10 billion budget that relies on an additional $150 million in state funding. Backers of the amended budget say it's money CPS is owed, but critics warn that if the funding doesn't materialize, the district could face even deeper cuts during the school year. Joining us now are Michaela Blaze, a CPS board member representing District 5B, which includes North Lawndale and Garfield Park, and Jessica Biggs, a CPS board member representing District 6B, which includes the Loop and the near South Side. Thanks to you both for joining us.
Thanks for having us, Brandis.
So, Michaela, you were the board member who introduced this budget amendment last week, assuming the $150 million more in state funding. Why did you offer that amendment? Why did you think that was the way to go?
I really believe that over 2,000 teachers being eliminated from our classrooms was a real problem. We talked often about making sure that there were no cuts to the classroom. We said that over and over again as a board in totality. And so the idea that this budget this is my second budget that we're passing, and those kind of cuts were going to be devastating. 10% of teachers in the Latino community were going to be cut, and it wasn't just teachers, it's administrators, and those teachers do after-school programs. I mean, the ripple effect was going to be tremendous, and so that wasn't acceptable to me. I have 64 schools in my district. I've never been to one of them where they said, whoa, there's just way too many teachers around here. So I feel I have a mandate from my folks, my constituents, to make sure that our schools have what they need.
Jessica, you voted against that amended budget. Tell us why.
I did. I think we can all agree that we need the state to do more to support our schools. And the state passed its budget back in May at the end of the spring session and made its allocation that the district has counted on in this budget. And the state has very clearly said that is the revenue that CPS can expect this school year. So while this was a tremendously challenging budget cycle, and I think Dr. King and her team did a really fantastic job doing as much as they could to protect our schools and classrooms, we're also in a moment where we have to live within our means, and we were presented with a balanced budget that assumed reasonable sources of revenue, and additional money from the state is not an additional reasonable source of revenue.
Michaela, Illinois House Speaker Welch voiced his support for providing supplemental funding, but any changes to the state's spending plan, they're going to require a supermajority when we get to that veto session in both chambers. Are you confident that the state, that lawmakers will deliver the votes needed for that money?
I'm really excited, actually. As a result of inserting that budget requirement, we've changed the conversation. Governor J.B. Pritzker earlier in the year said there's no money for CPS, and now he's saying he's interested in looking into seeing the plan. Speaker Chris Welch, as you mentioned, demonstrated his support. Senate President Don Harmon also. We had Senator Martwick come to the board meeting and make sure that he expressed his support. We've got a lot of support in Springfield, and it's time to push. It's time to really put all, stop the politics and just make things happen for the kids. I didn't come here to cut jobs. I didn't come here to give people in my community less. I'm actually really excited about how the conversation has changed over the last week.
$150 million, how did you arrive at that number, or is that just the size of the hole that we needed filling last week?
That the 150 million was the would compensate those teachers that they were going to eliminate. So for me, it was an easy. It was easy to go ahead and push for that number. There were other members of the board that pushed for an additional $85 million from the city to prevent furloughs, and I'm here with them to fight for that money as well.
Jessica, you said, the district has to live within its means. The loss of that many teachers and support staff, do you consider that living within the district's means, or do you believe there could have been other ways to trim the budget as the district needed?
Yeah, what we know is that even in a moment like this, about 65 to 85% of the teachers who were laid off will be able to find other positions back within the district. So while it is really striking to hear, 2,000 teachers, when we know that many of this is a result of movement of students and families, and then we need our educators to go where our students are, I think no cut is a good cut. And there are real constraints that we're under right now.
What happens if the state does not come through with this money?
Well, we know a little bit because we've been here before. In 2016 and 2017, we were in another moment. Actually, I was a principal at the time, and the district assumed revenue from the state that never materialized. And so I very clearly recall in the middle of the school year, when that money did not arrive, we were forced into numerous furloughs. About twice as many teachers had to be laid off during that time to make up for that first part of the year, we had staff lose cost of living adjustments, and I think importantly, the district started some of the most risky borrowing that it's engaged in. And even today, we're paying about $200 million in debt service and interest on the borrowing that occurred during that time just to keep our doors open. That's money taken away from teachers and classrooms.
Michaela, we know that lawmakers and Governor Pritzker had to close the state's own budget gap during its budget season. Where do you think this additional funding could come from for CPS?
So we had over $1 billion in a revenue surplus from the state that from the budget that just closed in June. But I'll go back to 2017. That was the year that the EBF was passed, which resulted in the largest increase of funding to CPS ever. I think putting pressure on our financial partners is important. The same way CPS puts pressure on the city and the city council to increase their TIF funds and what they can assume. I think we have to make sure that the partner, the state, who it's actually in their constitution to fund public education, needs to really think about the fact that their commitment to CPS is only, excuse me, is only at 25%. The rest falls on property tax owners or property owners and in their taxes. And so it's time that we all really make that commitment. We stick to what we've been saying repeatedly. No cuts to classrooms. We need more for our kids, not less.
Jessica, CPS is also counting on $285 million in TIF funding from the city. Your fellow board members have said if we can count on additional money from the city, we should be able to count on additional money from the state. That said, though, do you believe that TIF funding, counting on it the way the district does in this budget, is that any more reliable than counting on money from the state?
Yeah, I mean, we need to be able to count on revenue from all of our partners. I think the key difference here is the state finished their budget cycle back in May and made their allocation. So it's very clear what the state is going to be able to provide CPS this year. The city of Chicago enters into their budget cycle in October, right, during the course of our fiscal year. And so they also have a major budget gap to fill. As we've spoken with members of the city council, it seems very reasonable that the city will have to surplus enough TIF for their own budget to be able to meet this $285 million for the district. And that's revenue we know that will come in this fiscal year.
So I've also talked with members, with folks at City Hall, and they said the 285 is a real stretch. They said the $100 million that was initially introduced was going to be tough, but they were going to do it. They said 200 is really going to be problematic, and then the 285, they were shrugging their shoulders. So I think similarly to last year, when a group of us of board members went to City Hall and we met with the mayor and we were able to secure the record TIF surplus that we got last year, I'm hoping that all the board members will come together and help in the state and make sure. And let's not forget, we funded the entire transit system in veto session. The buses and trains were about to stop running, but we were able to get that funding in veto session. I think we shouldn't just give people a pass. Everyone on campaign trail after campaign trail says the kids are the most important, education is the most important. People love to yell at me at events and say, our kids can't read, and those kind of things. But
before we run out of time,
it's time to invest in them.
What if the state doesn't come up off of it in the veto session?
Then we'll have to, listen, what I'm here to tell you is this is an opportunity. This is an opportunity for us all to come together as a board, to not play politics, to not, the same folks who don't want to go and harass the state for money are the same folks who are talking about school closings. We've got a lot of challenges that we have to face.
We're out of time. Jessica,
Yep.
Really quick, 10 seconds. Is the district going to be able to make payroll?
I certainly hope that they will be able to make payroll. I think there's a really critical question in this moment about what those borrowing costs will be as a result of this maneuver.
Okay, Jessica Biggs, Michaela Blaze, thanks to you both. Best of luck.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Up next, responding to a nationwide blood supply crisis.
Education reporting on Chicago Tonight is brought to you in part by Press Forward Chicago.
The American Red Cross is sounding the alarm about the country's blood supply. Last week, the organization declared a nationwide blood supply crisis for only the second time ever. While all blood types are needed, the agency had less than a one-day supply of type O positive blood, the most commonly used in trauma care. Joining us now with more on the potential impact and how hospitals can prepare are Dr. Konstantin Kanakis, the incoming medical director of Blood Bank and Transfusion Services at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, and Kelly O'Connell, the CEO of the American Red Cross of Illinois. Thanks to you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Kelly, the Red Cross announced this blood supply crisis last week. What is the latest update?
Yes, we still are in a crisis. We absolutely need more people to make appointments and come give blood. We're seeing some movement, which is fantastic, but over the summer, we often see the blood supply dip a little bit. This summer is a little bit more unusual because we're contending with lots of natural disasters across the country, even right here in Chicago and in Illinois, where we've seen an uptick in tornadoes and storms, right? And so that just disrupts people's everyday.
Who can donate?
Many people can donate. You just have to be 17 years old, weigh 110 pounds, and generally feel healthy when you wake up that day.
Okay. Dr. Kanakis, in addition to trauma care, what other blood service needs do hospitals have?
Oh, that's a good question. Of course, it's easy to recognize that folks that experience trauma need blood, right? But those having surgery with some blood loss, pregnant women, premature babies, those with chronic anemias, and as the rates increase in the United States, those with chronic illnesses like complex leukemias, lymphomas, and other things.
Kelly, I noticed in the press release when you all made this announcement last week that you referred to something as sort of like the trauma summer, right? Like are needs increasing in the summer in addition to what we're experiencing now where donations are falling?
Right. So most summers, traumas increase, right? You have different accidents. There's lots more activity out there, so we do see more accidents and more trauma going into the hospitals. We also see folks taking more vacations. Your routines are not the same, right? And so we see less and less people coming in to donate blood. So those two things, increase for need and decrease of folks donating, are sort of the perfect storm.
And of course, this summer you also have cyclosporiasis.
Yes, we do have that. We have many more natural disasters, as I talked about. We've had to cancel blood drives because of lost power due to storms, right? So we're trying to run as fast as we can to make sure we keep up with the demand.
Dr. Kanakis, tell us about the work that you've done in helping hospitals to prepare for blood shortages.
Sure. Having a plan or a policy about blood shortages is useless unless you actually practice it, right? So we've done research in doing simulation exercises and measuring local regional confidence in blood centers. And it turns out that those that do have a plan, as we studied, are more confident in dealing with them. They've got a plan to do it and they can respond accordingly. Plans include things like triaging who gets blood first if there's a limited supply, what to do when you change your policies when there are shortages, and bringing people that might not normally be in the decision-making process part of the table.
What are some of those ethical questions that the team will have to work through during a shortage?
Basically, at the crux is who gets blood first if everybody needs blood and there's not enough, right? So bringing in the ethical questions, specialists that deal with that, specialists in transfusion, specialists in blood supply, talking about the same sort of milieu of things that we have to consider for patients, all of which goes into philosophies that we employ, including things called patient blood management, where we try to use the fewest amount of blood products to achieve the greatest outcome, all while trying to maintain success and safety outcomes.
Kelly, why O-type? Why is that so necessary?
Well, the doctor can talk even more about this, but it really is that universal type, right? So that when there's a trauma, you know that can go to any patient. And so that's so important. And that's why we're really trying to get anyone who's type O in to donate blood this summer.
What can people expect when they go donate?
It's very easy. I actually became a blood donor for the first time when I joined the Red Cross. I was one of those people who was a little bit scared, but it's takes less than an hour. You go in, they check your iron and do a quick health history to make sure you are able to donate, and the donation process itself can take between about 6 to 8 minutes.
Okay. Dr. Kanakis, long-term trends in blood availability, are there?
There are. Over the past few decades, the number of donors has decreased, especially for those under 40 years old. Under 30, it's really, really low. So trying to get those young donors back to the donor centers is critical. Additionally, what's important is making sure that the donor supply is as diverse as the recipient supply, which in a place like Chicago, we've got, you can imagine, a very diverse patient population.
Kelly, we talked about the sort of the historic nature of this particular crisis. The last time the Red Cross declared one of these was in 2022. What happened then?
Yep, so that, as we probably all remember, was during the COVID time, and it was when COVID spiked. And so we are seeing an increase in COVID. Folks were needing to stay home, and folks were being infected with COVID, and so weren't able to come out and donate at the same rates that we needed them to.
Okay, so I don't know, it's just a little interesting that the second ever to happen, the second crisis ever to happen is happening now under some very different circumstances. We are not in a global pandemic.
True. No, that's true. I think there's just, again, there's a couple things going on with foodborne illnesses, the sort of summer routine changes, and then the natural disasters that are really happening all across the country.
Doctor, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the really good news, though, it's solvable, right? If folks can come out, even if 3 more people go to each drive that we have on the books, the crisis will be eliminated. We'll be able to have the blood that we need.
Doctor, we've got 30 seconds left. Why is it important to have a diverse supply of donors, or diverse donors?
Yeah. Traditionally, a lot of donors came from 1 or 2 demographics of folks, and there is, as you can imagine, many, many diverse genetic components in people's compatibility with blood, more than just ABO typing. So making sure the blood supply is diverse, make sure that we can safely take care of patients.
Okay, that is a good place to leave it. Dr. Constantine Kanakis, Kelly O'Connell, thanks to you both for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
And up next, we check in on the Shedd Aquarium's rescued beluga whales. The Shedd Aquarium's newest residents are swimming along. It's been about 2 weeks since 4 beluga whales were rescued from a marine park in Canada and transported to the Shedd, and their travels drew some attention. Our Patty Wetley recently stopped by to see how the whales are adapting to their new home.
The new residents are being kept out of the public eye, but on the day we visited, they were just starting to meet some of the Shedd's other belugas.
We have staff here 24 hours a day, and we're monitoring them constantly. What they're looking for is how many times they're pooping, how much they're eating, how many times they're breathing, where the animal's spending time, who they're spending time with.
That's because, like people, belugas are social creatures. There were 30 whales in Canada needing new homes. The team at Shedd had to factor in the whales' personalities when deciding which ones to bring to Chicago.
One of the most important things that we did in creating a rescue plan is keeping social groups together. So when we looked at that, we were looking at animals that were really confident, we were looking at animals that were leaders, and some animals are more of a follower, and they're an animal that goes along with the entire group.
Shedd's new foursome were already a tight-knit group with a distinct hierarchy.
We have Acadia, who she's 2,400 pounds, the largest beluga that we brought here to Shedd, and she loves to eat. Sierra is a very independent woman, and she's spunky. And then we also have Lillowette and we have Osiris, and both of those are very, very calm and gentle ladies who just go along with the flow. It's so incredible to see the animals here at Shedd and the new animals swimming together nice and calm.
Shedd's lead veterinarian, Carissa Tang, said she's cautiously optimistic about the way the rescued belugas have adapted so far.
It's really impossible to say what every day will bring. We're taking it hour by hour, day by day, and we're seeing some really positive signs right now with these 4. In terms of the rescue as a whole, it has gone really well.
The Shedd is prepared to bring home more of the 24 whales left in Canada if needed.
We have a 3 million gallon, 6 interconnected habitats in our Abbott Oceanarium that's up to 30 feet deep. So we're able to provide a lot of social flexibility and choice between all of these habitats.
In the meantime, the Shedd hopes the rescued beluga's story will educate and inspire change for whales living in the wild.
And there are so many people, particularly in our city, that will never be at an ocean and that will never get that opportunity to see this animal up close. I know that we need to all work together in order to protect our planet, in order to protect our animals. So these animals are definitely a spark, and they're a spark for a lot of different people.
For Chicago Tonight, I'm Patty Wetley.
For more on how the whales are adjusting, check out our website. And that's our show for this Monday night. Stay connected with our reporters and what they're working on by following us on Instagram at WTTW Chicago. And join us tomorrow night at 5:30 and 10. Sweeping changes are taking effect for student loan borrowers. What you should know. Now, for all of us here at Chicago Tonight, I'm Brandis Friedman. Thank you for watching. Stay healthy and safe, and have a good night.
Closed captioning is made possible by Robert A. Clifford and Clifford Law Offices, a personal injury law firm working to preserve the dignity and rights of all individuals.